So next we're going to talk about goals. We're going to actually have our characters go from this one null here, or this one object here, to the second object here. And these are both disk objects. I use disk because they're flat, and it's going to avoid the particles trying to fly up and down off the surface. So we're just going to get those two nulls into our scene by selecting them, F3, just dragging them into our ice tree. Okay, so I want to make these goals. The way to do that is a goal is a way of having a particle go towards something. And we're going to use the move towards goal node to help control our particles. Now we have a bunch going on in this scene right now, so I'm actually going to disconnect my state while I set this up, just so it's easier to see what's going on. So we're just going to use disconnect the state tree here. We'll reconnect it in a bit. Now, if we disconnect the state tree, we're not going to have the simulate node that exists in each state, so we need to bring a simulate particle node back in here. And then we're going to use our move towards goal to hook this in there for the time being. And then of course our goal would be, first goal would be this disk. And we'll hook it into geometry. We'll do the second goal in a minute. Now if I hit play, our characters are moving. Again, we're watching our characters here. If we want, we can disconnect the characters. Again, just for speed and looking, just disconnect the characters for the time being, and we'll see our boxes move now as goals. And we're going to hook everything else up in a second. Everything's moving kind of slowly, and that's because right now the goal speed is being set a new velocity of 5. You can actually say you can multiply the existing velocity. Now I take the speed and you can see they just flew off. You can multiply by emit velocity, and that's probably one of the best ones to use because it just takes the emit velocity and you can see how they flew there towards the particle. So that's how to go towards a goal. You can give a random location. You can also adjust when it considered it's actually reached the goal, and I've set mine to 5 here. You can have a smaller or larger value depending what you want. And you can decide what happens when it hits the goal, how much it decelerates, or you can do other things as well, like control the orientation as well. We're going to keep this pretty straightforward here. So we're going to get a second goal. We want to go from one goal to another goal. And the way to do that, we can use the multi-goal sequencer. And the multi-goal sequencer allows us to go between multiple goals, just as it sounds. So I'm just hooking this in by dragging it on the curve here, and I'm going to make another copy of my move towards goal. And we're just going to hook in the second disk. And we'll hook this in to our new goal. And if we hit play now, it goes towards the first goal, and then off to the second goal. And that's working great. So how will it work with my characters? Well, let's see. If I disconnect this from here, as I said, I have to connect all these through the state trees if I want to work with our characters in the state trees. So to do that, I'm just going to move it back here for a second. Go delete my node here and then hook up my state tree again. Great. And then I'm going to hook this through the execute on every frame. So there's an execute on every frame here. Just to keep things clean, I'm going to get myself an execute node. And that's just going to let me make life a little easier because I'm going to hook a lot of things into these two state trees. And I'm only using the first two. The third one, the die one, I don't really have to worry about it going towards a goal because it's going to be dead. So let's get the first one and hook this into execute on every frame. If we hook into the first one, that's going to work while the characters are walking. Oops. Let me just get my characters turned on again. So it's going to work while they're walking. Now, of course, they're all moving together now. But when they run, it's really just keeps them going. You can see it's going to go straight past that goal and just keep moving. It's just set the velocity here, and that velocity will just keep going. It's not going to the second goal. If I want to go to the second goal, I have to hook this into both states when the characters are moving. So we need to hook it into here, execute on every frame. There we go. So we've hooked it into both execute on every frames and these two ones again. The final one I'm kind of stopping the particles anyway, so I'm not as worried about hooking it in. So now, there we go here. We're going to have to slow them down as well, because everything's going way too fast. And then they should turn, they're bunching up here, and that's normally what happens with goals, and they turn and they go to the next position. And that's working pretty well. They're not aligned yet, the speed's not correct, but everything's working pretty well. So I'm just going to change the speed multiplier down to 1 and 1 here. And you can also multiply by existing velocity, and then it actually won't change the speed as long as you're using a 1 multiplier. This can cause rapid acceleration if you're not careful. So just whichever one you want to use. We don't want to actually set the velocity here, because so leave these set to 1, and it should use the velocity we are setting in the state trees. So in this case, characters are moving. And now they're running towards the goal, and then when they hit the goal, they're going to change. Now, another thing that's happening inside here are there's these curves. And these curves are actually controlling the speed when it gets to the goal. This is the distance from the goal. So when they get to the goal, they're actually going to be slowing down. And you may want to adjust the velocity over distance to goal so it don't slow down. So sometimes I actually delete this first one or change it so it don't slow down quite as much. And I've set up the animation slowing down when they slow down. As you can see, they're running in slow motion right now. But you may want to change this. I often would take this one here, change the key property, and just say, at frame 0, when it's at the goal, set the value to say 0.75. And then it's not going to slow down all the way to a stop. It's going to slow down a bit. It's something you can work with if you want to in these. And something to be aware of course, because if you're saying, why is everything slowing down? That would explain what's going on. Okay, so this should be good, and we can play it back and see how it looks. You'll notice one thing that's happening right now is the particles are bunching together. We're going to look at that later on, but the other thing we're going to work on is the obstacles and go around the two cylinders in the scene.